India Global on NDTV. I'm Maha Siddiqui. Over the next half an hour, we'll focus on the big state visit of Prime Minister Modi to the United States. As the two leaders, that is Joe Biden and Prime Minister Modi, meet next week, we'll take a look at the expected substantial outcomes, the way ahead in the Indo-US relationship and the symbolism of it all. Our big guest on the show today, India's ambassador to the United States, Narendra Singh Sandhu, will be joining us. But first, the headlines. Prime Minister Modi's historic state visit to the US. This will be the first state visit, state dinner at the White House and an address to the US Congress. Defense deals to be the big takeaways from GE HAL jet engines joint production to drones. Groundwork for tech transfer, is it? US envoy to India, Eric Garcetti, speaks exclusively to NDTV, says that they want to see no country threatens India. This is in the context of China. But first up, the Prime Minister's visit to the United States and the agenda. Let's take a look at what all is expected from the 21st of June to the 24th of June. First of all, the big address will be and the big meeting will all be in Washington DC, but the events will start from New York, where we will first of all see Prime Minister Modi, in fact, holding that yoga event in New York in the United Nations headquarters, after which he will be moving to Washington DC, where there is going to be a bilateral meeting on the 22nd of June, after which he will be addressing the US Congress, a joint session of the US Congress, after which there will be a state dinner that same evening with President Joe Biden, and the next day a luncheon meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris, after which in fact will be organized in the State Department. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be present as well, after which he will be addressing young entrepreneurs in an event that is being organized again in Washington DC at the Kennedy Center, and finally at the Reagan Center he will be interacting with the diaspora. That winds up his 4-day visit to the United States. Let me now go across immediately to India's ambassador to the United States, Narendra Singh Sandhu, who's joining us here on the show now. Many thanks, Ambassador Sandhu, for speaking with NDTV. My first question, sir, to you is, what are some of the specifics that we can look at over here in terms of collaboration and takeaways from this big visit of the Prime Minister?
Maha, you are aware that Prime Minister has visited the United States on several occasions, but this time it's a state visit, and it would also be landmark and very comprehensive. So substantive and ceremonial elements will clearly show the depth of the partnership and the warmth between the two leaders. Now, you asked about the focus areas. I would broadly say 5 of them. First would be health, and in that, affordable medicines and affordable vaccines are extremely important now, especially after COVID. In that, perhaps you may be aware that India plays a very significant role in providing generics to United States, and similarly in vaccines. In fact, the co-production of vaccines has led to the prices coming down actually from $60 to $1. So healthcare is going to be one focus area. Okay. Then another one is going to be tech, and that is a basket which includes IT, digital, startup, innovation. In each of these, there is something that can be said, and it's a very critical area. Similarly, the third is going to be clean energy, and as you know that renewables are an important focus both in the United States and in India. And within renewables, we have the solar, battery technology, hydrogen. These are again key areas which would be under discussion. Fourth is what I would describe as education and knowledge partnership. You know that under the new education policy, there is a huge focus and a great opportunity now for having campus-to-campus relations, intertwining of degrees, doing joint research work, and having many other possibilities. But again, an important focus is going to be skilling. As you are aware that India has a very young population, and that young population is not only an asset for India, but can also be an asset in bilateral relationship with the United States, but global good too. So that's another important area. And similarly, the final one I would say is defense and strategic. Again, there is much more understanding on international issues today, and defense, as I have mentioned to you, that the tech is cross-cutting, and United States is one of the most important tech powerhouses, and India is an emerging powerhouse, and therefore it is but natural that there will be much more collaboration on that. I would say the important takeaways will be the convergences in tech, defense, science, economic collaboration that will be adequately reflected. And finally, I will just like to say that there is an underlying foundation which is today different from what was earlier. Firstly, all these focus is people-oriented, is development-oriented. Secondly, trust and confidence are important ingredients. For example, the sharing of technology just will not be possible. You have seen the US NSA, who was recently in India, and earlier our NSA had come here in January, and you are seeing so much of focus on ISET. The trust and confidence is an important part of that. And of course, the strategic convergence is very much there. And finally, if I may say that this is not only for the good of both, that is United States and India, but also for the global good.
All right. Sector by sector, you've given us a sense of what we should be expecting. Now, I want to understand from you the significance that Prime Minister Modi will be addressing the US Congress for a second time.
See, the US Congress has traditionally, and when I say traditionally, I mean relatively vis-a-vis other institutions, has been an early investor in India, if I may use the American terminology. They have been much more positive since the late 90s. And indeed, this is going to be, of course, the first time an Indian leader in the last 75 years will be addressing the US Congress twice. And by doing so, our Prime Minister will join the league of Nelson Mandela, Winston Churchill, and the Israeli leaders. Very, very few people have been welcomed to address the Congress twice. And you are aware that last time he addressed it in 2016. It's there in the YouTube for anyone to see. You can see the reception that was given. But it's also true that the world has changed in many ways in the last few years too. Pandemic, technology, essentially the technology revolution happening in India, the economy, the environment. And I must mention to you here that there is a lot of excitement in the United States, particularly in the US Congress, to actually listen to the Prime Minister at the congressional platform and listen to his vision for the partnership. And in this, two aspects are very significant. One, this joint invitation this time was signed by the 4 top leaders of US Congress. That reflects the bipartisan support that India enjoys at the capital. Secondly, there is certainly interest in India, in its growth story, and obviously its young population and potential.
Ambassador Sandhu, my final question to you is with regards to trade and business. The Prime Minister is expected to meet many CEOs. Who are some of these big ones? Can you give us a glimpse of some of the big names that he's likely to meet?
See, ahead of the visit, I am going to avoid getting into specifics, but I can certainly confirm to you that Prime Minister will be interacting with the top CEOs and professionals in different programs. There's the White House dinner, there's the State Department Vice President's lunch, There are going to be direct meetings. There's an interaction with professionals, etc., etc. And in this, I think it's important to note that the economic partnership between the United States and India has been expanding. You know, the trade stands at record level, that is 190 billion plus at this moment. And this is despite the fact we don't have an FTA, or even taking into account that COVID had led to a lot of economic problems both world over, including in the United States. And we have also had a number of ministerial trade policy forum meetings already held. The CEO forum and commercial dialogue again was held. The CEO forum was constituted, and that includes the top CEOs from both the sides. And of course, you are also aware that we are part and parcel of Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. You know, amongst the sectors, and here again, I just want to underline, the technology is going to be an important focus area. And you have seen the launch of ISET, and in ISET, semiconductors, AI, quantum, telecom, which includes 4G, 5G, 6G, space, these are all going to be important elements of that. And finally, of course, defense industrial collaboration. You saw that the Defense Secretary of the United States was recently there, and he signed an important agreement there. So this collaboration is going to be important and futuristic.
Ambassador Taranjeet Singh Sandhu, many thanks for speaking with NDTV. Let's move on now and talk about some of the big deals that we are likely to see when the Prime Minister visits the United States. First of all, these two big deals are expected to be in the defense sector itself, and the big question remains, will there be a technology transfer? That is what India has been asking for, looking for, and also stressing on Make in India. So there's one big deal that is expected, that is between GE and HAL in India, and this is for the joint production of the jet engines. Now these are GE jet engines that is something that HAL will want to use in its light combat aircrafts, the LCA, the latest LCAs. This is an important deal. It is likely to come through. Some sort of announcement is expected on the 22nd of June. And the second one is with regards to drones. This is something that India is looking at, and we are a step closer. It is believed that this has now got a green signal from the Indian side, and this deal could also in fact be announced by the two sides when the Prime Minister meets President Joe Biden. Meanwhile, what are the other sectors? Now, the two sides have been keenly pushing technology partnership as well, from looking ahead to artificial intelligence to currently building a resilient semiconductor supply chain. Why is this critical for both India and the United States? Is this with an eye on the common threat of China? Let's find out. It is so small that it can fit in the palm of your hand, but so powerful that it runs your car, bank ATMs, trains, internet services, and a host of consumer electronics. This is a semiconductor chip, a critical technology that quite literally is powering the tech world around you and beyond you. Semiconductors are the present and the future. And that's why India and the United States are working to remove hurdles in their relatively new field of partnership to speedily diversify the global semiconductor supply chains.
The United States and India are poised to lead in the clean energy transformation, to shore up and diversify global semiconductor supply chains and other critical goods, to lead the revolutions in artificial intelligence, in advanced computing, in biotechnology, and quantum. The whole thrust and purpose of ISET is about empowering and elevating the work of all of you, and it is about trying to get us out of the way to the maximum extent possible.
Semiconductors is an area identified by the two sides under ICET, or the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technology, that was launched by Prime Minister Modi and President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the Quad Summit in Tokyo last year. In March this year, India and the US signed an initial pact to increase private sector cooperation in semiconductor supply chain resilience and diversification. The idea clearly is to not just facilitate business between the two sides, but to also reduce the dependence on China and to prevent it from being able to strategically hold critical technology.
We see India as a trusted technology partner. It's a trusted partner, and we want to continue to deepen our technological relationship with India. This isn't about decoupling. What it is about, though, is being eyes wide open to the fact that China is explicitly trying to get access to American technology for use in its military, and we need to protect ourselves and our allies and partners from that happening.
Under ICET, the two will also collaborate on artificial intelligence, quantum computing, telecommunications, defense and space. Maha Siddiqui, NDTV.
Meanwhile, the US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, spoke exclusively with NDTV's Sam Daniel, and he gave us a sneak peek into the possible key takeaways during the big meeting. Listen in.
I have with me the US Ambassador to India, Mr. Eric Garcetti. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
With NDTV.
My pleasure.
What has changed over the last 18 years that has brought about this kind of a close Indo-US partnership?
You know, so much has changed. I think our friendship has deepened. Our partnership now covers much more. And this is really the reflection not only of two men who have great friendship and rapport, two governments that are working closer together than ever, but two peoples who I think feel those bonds of friendship, people-to-people ties and investments in culture, in a common strategic vision of a world, two democracies that want to see a world that helps lift people up and not divides them. So I think this is 18 years ago is a lifetime ago. Right now we face a very dangerous world, but the US-India relationship, I think we're stronger together and we can have an impact in the world when we are strong.
Anything on the Biden-Modi chemistry?
It's amazing. I mean, we've seen it. We've witnessed it. We just saw it in Japan. They, I think, had similar beginnings, you know, very humble beginnings, modest men, really care about the everyday person, you know, that working person who isn't sure whether they can pay their bills for their home, who wants to put food on the table. And I think they've always connected on that front. But this will also be a celebration of the work that they lead, of two peoples that see the threats in the world, whether it's autocracy, whether it's militarism, whether it's the lack of trade. We want to see a world in which there's more trade and prosperity, where there's more peace on this planet, and where we protect the people. And I think the U.S. and India, you know, 1.75 billion people together are an unstoppable force.
Give us a sneak peek into the key takeaways for India through this meet, maybe in areas like defense, trade, and technology.
Well, I call it the 4 Ps. Peace, prosperity, planet, and people. For peace, you'll see, I think, a greater defense partnership of protecting our people and our countries, deepening some of our industrial production, whether it's aircraft engines for our fighter jets, or whether it's looking at the undersea domain awareness of understanding how we can preserve free seas and oceans, or whether it's looking at the ways that we can protect and enhance each other's defense. That's one. Prosperity, I think you'll see moves on free trade, where we see barriers come down that have been erected in past years, so we can more freely trade with each other and have more jobs on both sides of the Indo-Pacific. Planet, I think we go from the seabed all the way to the stars. Whether it's the exploration of space or work on climate change, you're going to see a number of agreements that we come together on that will enhance our ability to do that together. And then finally, people. One example will be work to shorten our visa times and to add more people so that we can process Indian visa requests, educational exchanges, cultural arts and sports programs. So the sky's the limit right now, and I think you will see in almost every category of cooperation, the U.S. and India are deepening this relationship.
Armed drones?
We may see. I mean, obviously, being able to have eyes over the ocean to protect it. We've seen the Indian Navy testing ones that have been very successful, American manufactured. And long term, we want to see the ability of India to produce here. This isn't just about selling things to India. This isn't about the money. This is about the prestige of being able to say that we together are protecting the world.
There's a growing threat of a full-blown conflict between India and China, with both sides building up their weaponry and infrastructure on either sides. And how concerned is the US about this? These after recent clashes over the last couple of years.
Well, look, we believe in India. We believe in borders. We believe in sovereignty. And I think we've proven ourselves. Whatever India has needed or asked for, the United States has been there to say we will respect that and reinforce that. Whether it's in the international realm when it comes to resolutions, or whether it's on the ground assistance that you need. But for us, we want to see borders respected. We want to make sure that no country threatens India, and that no country threatens the sovereignty of any nation. If we don't have that, we don't have peace. And I think you will see that's one of the reasons we have the strengthening defense partnership, to ensure that that is not just for India and the US, but for every other country too.
There's been a huge delay in issue of visas over the last few years. It's vacation time. Also, students in the past few years have lost the admissions in the US. What's being done to fix this now?
You know, that's of such strong concern to me as ambassador. And one of the things I said, and the president asked me to look at this, is that we have to continue to bring visa wait times. There's some great news. First of all, we are 1/3 more visas than before the pandemic, 2/3 faster than we had at our worst point. But we need to still bring that down and hire more people, which thankfully, hopefully this meeting will make some announcements of more people to process more visas. And we processed more student visa applications this past year from India than any country in the world. So you will see those continue to come down, and that will be a priority for me, and I know it's a priority for the president.
If you can ask just one last question. How sensitive, how challenging and delicate is it for the US over the pro-Russia stand of India, particularly in the context of the Ukraine war? Is the US putting business interests ahead of key values? Does it override that?
So our bond is unbreakable. Our friendship cannot be ripped apart. I believe that in my heart. The US and India are the closest of friends, our people and our government. But we also won't stop speaking out against an unprovoked war of aggression by Russia in Ukraine. I was there personally in February. I talked to mothers who lost their parents in a peaceful building when a missile ripped it apart and took their lives. A mother who's away from her children because she had to send them out of the country to protect them and is separated from a 5-year-old. Let's remember, this is about sovereignty and borders, something I know India and Indians respect. And I think that people understand that, even with historic ties and other things, that over time we must find peace, but it's in no way going to stop the US and India from doing other great things together.
That was the US Ambassador to India talking to us in Chennai with Suresh. Sam Daniel, for NDTV.
Now, President Biden is rolling out the red carpet for the Indian Prime Minister. The state visit comes 9 years into Prime Minister Modi's tenure. But in his 3 years as president so far, Joe Biden has hosted only 2 other leaders for a state dinner, the French president and the South Korean president. And remember, he is remembered for having sung American Pie. So what's the interaction between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, and what's it been like over the last few months in the lead up to the state visit? Here's a quick look at that.
President Joe Biden to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He said, "You are causing me real problem. Next month we have a dinner for you in Washington. Everyone in USA wants to come. I have run out of tickets." Unquote. Quipped President Biden, adding that you are too popular, I should get your autograph. And President Biden wasn't the only one vouching for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's global popularity. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese joined in the conversation, recalling the massive turnout at the community reception for the Indian Prime Minister in Sydney. On a more serious note, President Biden lauded the significant impact Prime Minister Narendra Modi had made on issues ranging from climate change to the Indo-Pacific to what the Quad was doing. Mr. Prime Minister, you have made a significant impact on everything, including what we are doing in Quad. You also made a significant shift in climate. You have influence in Indo-Pacific. You're making a difference.
We are here almost literally on the eve of what we believe will be a historic state visit by Prime Minister Modi. One that will further solidify what President Biden has called the defining relationship of the 21st century. We see this defining relationship as a unique connection between the world's oldest and largest democracies.
Beat the family photo at the G7 summit in Germany in 2022 or the Bali G20 summit just a few months later. The warmth the two leaders share reflects the upward trajectory of India-US ties. In 2016, in his maiden address to the US Congress, Prime Minister Modi had said,
"Today, our relationship has overcome the hesitations of history. Comfort, candor, and convergence define our conversations."
Every meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Joe Biden sees this sentiment come alive.
Well, that's it then on this edition of India Global, but we'll be coming to you next week for a special show from Washington, D.C. as we cover the Prime Minister's visit to the US. Prime Minister Modi's first state visit to the United States. As he meets President Joe Biden, I will be getting you all the latest updates from the ground, from New York to Washington, D.C., covering Prime Minister Modi's US visit live and non-stop on NDTV.